can start.
Okay.
Uh,
Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravane Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavare Paschatya Destarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaurabhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Jai.
Jai Prabhu.
Ishar Prabhu, you can
Yes, sir.
introduce the topic and then we'll start the discussion in class.
Thank you, sir.
Jai.
Uh, today's topic is, the title is Joyful Enthusiasm. Joyful enthusiasm is the ticket. Joyful enthusiasm is the ticket to Krishna consciousness, the ticket to becoming a devotee. Wherever we go, at least when I was a kid, today everything is online. You don't have to buy tickets. You have to pay for a link, I suppose. I should say, maybe I should have named it the Joyful Enthusiasm as the link. After all, yoga means to link with God. But anyway, we'll go back 50 years and say joyful enthusiasm is the ticket. So, in our previous talks, we have established the understanding that there's no way to advance in Krishna consciousness, to advance in our cultivation of Krishna. Krishna consciousness is a cultivation process. In our cultivation of this consciousness, other than through the pursuit, we have to pursue the development of an intimate living relationship with a bona fide spiritual master. An intimate living relationship. This is the key. So, such a spiritual master, of course, he has to be, as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita 4:34, the self-realized soul will impart knowledge unto you. Why? Because he has seen the truth. Because Tattva Darshanaha. Darshan means to have the audience of someone. And Tattva means the absolute truth. So Krishna says the self-realized soul, he can impart Krishna consciousness to you because he has seen the truth. So this is the kind of spiritual master one should approach. If one approaches someone who has not seen the truth, then game over. So such a spiritual master, he has to be eternally liberated, an eternally liberated associate of Krishna. And Srila Prabhupada refers to this relationship between between Krishna's pure devotee and his disciple as an apprenticeship program in which the disciple engages in the cultivation of Krishna consciousness. How? In the association of the pure devotee. They're together while they're practicing. It's not that he gives them something to do and he go off and do this, go off and do that. No, it's Krishna consciousness is being, how shall we say, cultivated in the association of a pure devotee. Why do you need to be right in that association? Because there's another phrase, or the way it's described again and again, that one should cultivate Krishna consciousness. How? Under the guidance of a pure devotee. So sometimes devotees, there are devotees now in Krishna consciousness cultivation, they're all over the world. And sometimes they quote from Srila Prabhupada, when he gave his commentary on the Srimad Bhagavatam. So he made this, he wrote this dedication to his spiritual master in the very first pages. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati. He said, on the first pages of his presentation, Srila Prabhupada writes as follows: we are following in the instructions of our spiritual master. No, he writes, he lives forever by his divine instructions, and the follower lives with him. He lives forever by his divine instructions, and the follower lives with him. And therefore, there's a tendency to insist we are following the instructions of our spiritual master. Therefore, we're with him. This is all that's necessary in order for us to receive the blessings of Krishna and our spiritual master. We're following his instructions. We keep the 4 regulative principles. We rise early to attend Mangal Artik. We participate in Tulsi Puja ceremony. We're chanting 16 rounds Hare Krishna. We're attending Srimad Bhagavatam class. We're taking prasadam. We're distributing Srila Prabhupada's books. Therefore, these are his instructions. We're following his instructions. Therefore, we are associating with Srila Prabhupada by following his instructions. Surely we will be blessed with spiritual advancement. However, in Srila Prabhupada's presentation of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi Leela, Chapter 1, Text 47, Srila Prabhupada writes as follows: There's two kinds, quote, there are two kinds of instructing spiritual masters. One is the liberated person fully absorbed in meditation, in devotional service. Let's consider that. One kind of instructing spiritual master, he's a liberated person who's fully absorbed in meditation, in devotional service. That's how he's instructing. We'll talk about that. And the other, Srila Prabhupada continues, is he who invokes the disciple's spiritual consciousness. How? By means of relevant instructions. Thus, Srila Prabhupada continues, the instructions in the science of devotion. It's a science, how one acquires this devotion. Thus, the instructions in the science of devotion, they're differentiated in terms of the objective and the subjective ways of understanding. Let's put that into simple English. There's two ways of understanding what is Krishna consciousness, what is devotional service. And Srila Prabhupada says there's two kinds of spiritual masters. There are two kinds of instruction. One of them is totally absorbed in a devotional mood. Srila Prabhupada writes, he's fully liberated and he's absorbed in meditation and devotional service within himself. And the other's giving objective instructions. Thus, Srila Prabhupada says, the instructions in the science of devotion, he says there's two ways. They're differentiated in terms of objective way of understanding and subjective way of understanding. So what is this subjective way of understanding? He's totally absorbed in devotion, in meditation, and we receive that instruction. Subjectively, we feel what he's feeling. We feel what the pure devotee is feeling towards Krishna. Let's read it again. Thus, the instructions in the science of devotion are differentiated in terms of the objective and subjective ways of understanding. We're understanding his mood subjectively. Imagine, the Acharya, Srila Prabhupada continues, it means one who teaches by his example. We're following. Prabhupada, Anuga means to follow. The Acharya, Srila Prabhupada continues, in the true sense of the term. In the true sense of the term, who is authorized to deliver Krishna. He enriches the disciple with full spiritual knowledge, and in this way awakens him to the activities of devotional service. That if one can receive that subjective instruction. So the conclusion is, now I'm talking again, that there's two kinds of instruction, spiritual masters. There are two kinds of instruction. Srila Prabhupada writes in this purport that the instructions in the science of devotion are differentiated in terms of the objective and subjective ways of understanding. We can understand his objective instructions, do this, don't do that. and we can understand his subjective instruction to feel what he's feeling. One kind of instruction is objective, the philosophy, the do's, the don'ts, and the other kind of instruction is subjective. Through the process of subjective instruction, the bona fide spiritual master shares his devotional feeling with us. In this way, a disciple becomes, what did Srila Prabhupada write in that passage? Enriched. We become enriched with that ingredient of the feeling of devotion. Don't we sing every morning, from him, this Krishna prema, it emanates. It's coming out. It emanates from him. It fills the whole universe. If we can catch it, that emanation, our ignorance is destroyed. From him, Krishna, prema bhakti, yaha hoite, avidya, ignorance. Vinashaya, our ignorance, by him in this way, our ignorance. If we can catch that subjective instruction, this is the real meaning of the phrase, Prabhupada Anuga. Anuga, one who's engaged in the cultivation of spiritual feelings under the guidance of Krishna's pure devotee. So, follow Anuga, like Raga Anuga Bhakti, means you're following the feelings of a pure devotee. That's a very advanced subject matter. I'm not qualified to talk about it, but at least we can have a relationship with our spiritual master. This process of subjective instruction is described poetically in our bhajans and in our literature in the various ways. It's not a new idea. It's just, sometimes we say about someone, it goes in one ear and out the other. We don't grasp. We just repeat. We sing every morning, the lotus feet of our spiritual master. It's the only way by which we can acquire this taste of pure devotion, pure devotional service. From him, this love of Krishna emanates. If we can catch this taste of devotion, our ignorance is destroyed. We say it every day. So then another one is in Srimad Bhagavatam, Srila Prabhupada writes, 1:5:25. Pure, the first sentence in the purport, pure devotion is infectious. The quality of pure devotion, it's infectious, but in a good sense. Just like an infectious disease. You catch it from someone who has it. Okay? And then if we go over to Nectar of Devotion, as Srila Prabhupada, in the 12th chapter, Srila Prabhupada writes, association is like a crystal stone. Means like a mirror that reflects whatever is placed before it. So if we come in touch with a pure devotee who has this love of Krishna, if the mirror of our mind, the mirror of our heart is clean, from him Krishna Prem emanates, our heart, like a mirror, can reflect that same feeling of devotion towards Krishna. And that's the way we become Krishna conscious. Association like a crystal stone. Then Srila Prabhupada explains in Bhagavatam, infection of the qualities of a pure devotee. What does it mean? Infection of the qualities of the pure devotee means to imbibe the taste of devotion in the association of a pure devotee. You're in his association, and you can feel his feeling of devotion to Krishna. You imbibe the taste like you're drinking something that's very sweet, nectar. You imbibe the taste. And so, and then in the prayer, another example, in the prayer in our songbook called Gurudev by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Hey, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur prays to his spiritual master, "O Master, I offer you all respect. I bow before you. For in this way I can acquire the energy by which I can know you. I can understand you. Then I'll be able to chant the holy name with these same feelings, and all my offenses will cease." Isn't that the same as from him Krishna emanates, and if I catch it by him, my ignorance is destroyed? He's saying, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, that if I'm respectful enough towards you, I can understand your feeling, and then I can begin to chant in this way with feeling. And this way my offenses will stop. There's no other way. So then if we go to teachings of Lord Chaitanya, chapter 18, Srila Prabhupada said, the process is, it's explaining the process, how one becomes a devotee. The process is that the spiritual master chants the mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. And the sound vibration, Srila Prabhupada continues, enters into the ear of the disciple. If the disciple chants with the same feeling, this becomes the worship of the holy name. And then the holy name spreads his glories within the heart of such a disciple. So these are just a few of the explanations of this process that Srila Prabhupada calls subjective instruction. Yes, he lives forever by his divine instruction, and the follower lives with him. So we have to accept the instructions in toto, not just the objective instruction, but the subjective instructions are the heart of the matter, because the subjective instructions go from his heart to our heart. As a matter of fact, in the Bhagavatam 10th canto, Srila Prabhupada explains that the process of initiation is the beginning of a heart-to-heart relationship between the disciple and the spiritual master. Heart-to-heart. When your heart is connected with Srila Prabhupada's heart, we'll begin to understand his heart. And in that very purport, Srila Prabhupada writes that unless we have initiation from a spiritual master who always has Krishna 100% in his heart, the disciple will never acquire the power to carry Krishna in his heart, because it's based on a heart-to-heart connection, relationship with a pure devotee who always carries Krishna within his heart. If we can connect our heart with him, we can learn the secret, the device, the feeling of devotion because Krishna cannot resist the pure devotion of the pure devotee. Therefore, that is what we're looking for. And the lotus feet of our spiritual master is the only way by which we can acquire that taste. So, these descriptions of the process of subjective instruction, their description. Srila Prabhupada lives forever by these divine instructions and by giving us, and the follower lives with him. The real Prabhupada is the disciple who becomes enriched with the devotional qualities of the pure devotee. How? By imbibing the taste of his pure devotion to Krishna. So the subject of today's talk is, well, how can we cultivate the quality of consciousness that enables us to enter into an intimate living relationship with Srila Prabhupada? A reciprocal relationship that enables us to engage, how? In a process of what? Of transcendental empathy. Transcendental empathy. I'm making up this phrase. You won't find it in our books. Srila Prabhupada calls it subjective instruction. Subjective means how you feel, not how you think. He says we're to get subjective instruction. He's talking about feeling, transcendentally feeling what he is feeling, transcendental empathy, so that we can begin to engage in the cultivation of Krishna consciousness. How? Under what? Under his transcendental guidance. He's sharing this with us. This transcendental empathy is described in Bhagavad Gita as the process of what? Of Bhagavad Gita 4:34, Tadbidi pranipatena paraprashnena sevaya. Inquiry, submission, and service. Inquiry. In our teachings of Lord Chaitanya, so what is this inquiry? Srila Prabhupada writes in 434 purport that nonsense inquiries are condemned. Nonsense inquiries. We have so many inquiries. In teachings of Lord Chaitanya, turn to chapter 12, you'll find Srila Prabhupada describes the fourth step in our surrendering process as follows, quote, the disciple will inquire and learn love from the spiritual master. It's right there in chapter 12, teaching of Lord Chaitanya. That is our inquiry, to go to him and say, what is this love of Krishna? What does it feel like to feel love for Krishna? Quote, number 4, chapter 12, the process of surrender, the fourth step. Quote, to inquire and to learn love from the spiritual master. We ask him, what is this love of Krishna? And we learn it from him. How? By subjective instruction, by transcendental empathy. In other words, the disciple approaches the bona fide spiritual master with the question, what is this feeling? What is this mood of devotion to Krishna? So this is inquiry. And the second ingredient, submission. Inquiry, submission, service. What is this submission? Submission means that our hearts are filled with an ardent desire to imbibe from Srila Prabhupada the taste of his devotion to Krishna. This is submission. I'm wide open. I want to understand this. I want to understand you. I want to feel what you're feeling. This is so the first question is, what is this love? The next question is, the next stage is, what is real inquiry? What is the measure of our inquiry? Are we serious? The measure of real inquiry is how much we're submissive to try and imbibe that taste from him. That's the measure of our inquiry. Not conceptual knowledge, but subjective knowledge. So the word, Srila Prabhupada, the submission means that our hearts we have this ardent desire to imbibe from Srila Prabhupada the taste of devotion to Krishna. How? Through the process of transcendental empathy, subjective instruction. We're receiving his instruction simply by him being absorbed in that mood of devotion. And the third ingredient, inquiry, submission, and service. So what is this service? Service in this context means now, we're saying, what is this feeling? Submission means I can taste what he's feeling. And service means to engage in our cultivation of Krishna consciousness. Our sadhana, for beginning, our sadhana to engage with the mood of devotion that we are imbibing from him in submission at the lotus feet of our spiritual master. So we say that we begin to serve. So they're not separate events, inquiry, submission, service. They're all going on simultaneously, always wanting to understand that taste. That's inquiry. Having the heart open to receive what he's sharing, that's submission. And service, while receiving that taste, engaging in our sadhana in that taste. We're that's under his guidance. We're practicing our Krishna consciousness. So that's why we say, that's the purport of the first verse of our Guru Puja prayer, that the lotus feet of our spiritual master is the only way by which we can acquire this taste of devotion to Krishna. From him, this taste of pure devotion to Krishna, it emanates. And from him, and if we can catch it, our ignorance is destroyed. This is science of Krishna consciousness. So we're trying to repeat. Why are we talking about these things? Because we're trying to understand, to cultivate. But we can't talk about it to the man in the street. So I have to talk about it with other devotees. And I need your association to keep this spirit alive in my heart. The following quotes from our books and from Srila Prabhupada's talks, they provide us with further insight into the scientific process of the cultivation of Krishna consciousness under the guidance of Krishna's bona fide representative, the Nitya Siddha, eternally perfect, eternal, intimate associate of Krishna, who is sent down to us by Krishna himself from Krishna Loka. The first thing, like Srila Prabhupada says in that Nectar of Devotion, when he says that association is like a crystal stone, like a mirror, that will reflect. We feel Srila Prabhupada, from him this love of Krishna emanates. If our heart is like a mirror, it will get that emanation and it will reflect it to Krishna Loka. Just like the moon receives the light of the sun and fills the landscape with this light. We receive the light of Krishna consciousness from Srila Prabhupada, and we reflect that towards Krishna. So he says, so what Srila Prabhupada says, this is the way it works. You look at chapter 12, Nectar of Devotion. He says, but there's one caveat, if that's the right word. There's one quality, there's one that we have to have. Prerequisite. The mirror of the heart has to be clean. Before we can understand, before we can feel his presence, before we can understand that Srila Prabhupada is omnipresent. Srila Prabhupada is omnipresent because he's the external manifestation of the Lord in the heart, the all-pervasive super soul. How does he get this quality? Because he's the Shakti Avesh avatar. Avatar means when Krishna descends. One quality, one character, one category of avatar is when Krishna himself enters into the heart of his pure devotee, and his pure devotee comes down to us in the material world, empowered with the quality of Krishna, to act as the all-pervasive super soul, who can have a personal relationship with all of us simultaneously. Therefore, he writes again and again in our book, one should not take the spiritual master as an ordinary human being. He looks like one of us, but he's a Shakti Avesh avatar, Shakshad Hari. Shakshad Hari Tvina Samasta Shastra Uktastataba Havyataiva Sadhikintu Pravoja Priyaiva Tasya Bande Guru Sri Charanarvindam. That not on his Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has written this samsara prayer. He says that this process of recognizing the Krishna's pure devotee as the external manifestation of the super soul, Shakshar Hari, he says this is the conclusion of all the revealed scriptures. It's not some new idea. Therefore, we can relate to Srila Prabhupada just as we would relate to Krishna himself. Just as we would relate to Krishna himself. So, the first requirement is that the heart has to be the mirror of the mind. The heart has. That means we're talking about the cultivation of the mode of goodness. Mode of goodness. Why has Srila Prabhupada tried to create a society of Brahmins? Brahminical initiation. Do you think he's trying to create a caste system so we can think we're better than other people? I'm now a Brahmin. I'm wearing a 10-cent piece of string on my neck. So therefore, now I'm better than somebody else. You can't touch me because I'll become contaminated. No, because the quality of the heart of a Brahmin, he can sense Srila Prabhupada, like the all-pervasive super soul, is omnipresent, and we can have a living relationship with him. I'll give you some quotes. Quote, this one is coming from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 14, text 10. Purport. Competition between the three modes of material nature. It's always going on. Therefore, one who is actually intent on advancing in Krishna consciousness, one who actually wants to, he's not joining another religion, he's not wanting to become a member of something, he wants to become a devotee. So he wants to have a relationship with God, with Krishna. So Srila Prabhupada, therefore, one who is actually intent on advancing in Krishna consciousness, he has to transcend these three modes. If one wants, Srila Prabhupada, he can develop how? By practice, the mode of goodness, and thus defeat the modes of ignorance and passion. Let's read that sentence. If one wants, we have to want. It says mode of goodness, happiness in the mode of goodness is written in our Bhagavad Gita is like poison in the beginning and nectar in the end, because we have to act in ways that we're not being servants of our senses. We're devoted. We're devotion. Everyone in the material world is a devotee. They're devoted to the senses saying, I want this, I need this, I want this, I need that. And we're serving. We're not this body, so we have to stop this devotional service to our senses. So Srila Prabhupada, in other words, one cannot concentrate one's mind and energy upon the Supreme unless one is detached from this material world. Following detachment, in other words, after we've acquired that, following detachment from the material, one can actually attain transcendental knowledge of the Absolute. As long as one's entangled in sense enjoyment or material enjoyment, it's not possible to understand the Absolute truth. We can't have an experience of it. They're mutually exclusive, devotional service and the desires of the mind and senses, material. They're mutually exclusive. Bible says man can't have two masters. Jesus on the mount, he's giving Sermon on the Mount. Either we're a servant of God or we're a servant of Mammon. Either we're a servant of God or we're a servant of Maya, illusory dictation. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 1854. One who is freed, I'm continuing with this purport. One who is freed from it. I got the wrong one. Although, if one is determined he can be blessed by the mode of goodness, and by transcending the mode of goodness, then from goodness one can have a relationship with a pure devotee. Because then one can receive subjective instruction. Then one can acquire a devotional taste. And then one can, by being situated in Krishna taste, one can overcome all material taste. So he's saying, by being determined, one can be blessed with goodness, and then by transcending goodness, he can be situated in pure goodness, which is called Vasudev, a state in which, a state in what kind of state? A state in which one can understand the science of God. He can understand what we've been talking about because he can live it. He can have a relationship with a pure devotee. Just like Jesus says in the Bible, there's no way to reach the Father except through me. He didn't mean he's the only pure devotee. He's telling them that unless you have a relationship with a pure devotee, you can't know Krishna. So, here's another one from Srimad Bhagavatam Purport. 3rd Canto, 26th chapter. Text number 72. Purport. As long as the mind is distracted toward the material, there's no possibility. As long as the mind is distracted toward the material, there's no possibility of concentrating one's mind and intelligence upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Amazing. As long as we're attracted towards material things, there's no possibility of concentrating one's mind and intelligence upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead or his partial representation, the Supersoul. In other words, Srila Prabhupada continues, in other words, one cannot concentrate one's mind and energy upon the Supreme unless one is detached from the material world. It's a prerequisite to Krishna consciousness. It's a prerequisite. Krishna consciousness, the way it's presented, the only way one can be detached from matter, from Maya, he has to be devotee. And the only way one can be a devotee, one has to be detached from Maya. The means and the goal are one and the same. Because it's not something you earn, it's something we be. We begin to live on that platform. So Srila Prabhupada says, as long as one is entangled in sense enjoyment or material enjoyment, maybe I'll have a little of this and a little of that, it is not possible to understand the absolute truth. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 1854. Quote, one who is freed from material contamination, what does he become? He's joyful. He can enter into devotional service. One has to become joyful and in order to enter into devotional service. Well, Krishna says, Brahmabhuta prasanatma na sochati na kankshati. Prasanatma means joyful in the heart. 1851 to 53 describes how a person lives in the mode of goodness, always meditating within his heart, in a mood of internal peacefulness. Shanti. It says that. You look and see. Then Krishna says, one who lives like this, satisfied within, not grasping for things without. We can't stop grasping for things without unless we feel that satisfaction within. So this is the quality of the Brahman. Samodhamastapashocham, 1842. Bhagavad Gita, the first quality, internal peace of the heart. Internal peace of the heart, when it becomes deeper, one approaches the Brahmabhuta stage, where the Brahman, that's where he goes. He begins to feel a joyfulness within himself. And what are the symptoms of that joyfulness? Prasanatma. Na sochati, na kankshati. all his lamentations over material things finished, and all his hankering for material satisfaction finished. It's the two ways of describing the same thing, identical. Internal joyfulness in the heart and detachment from material desires. They're the same thing. So when Krishna says, if he comes to this by the mode of goodness, then what happens? Immediately, not only he sees himself, that I'm not this body, I'm spirit, but he sees everyone else that way. Sama sarveshu bhuteshu. Sama. Sarveshu bhuteshu means all living entities. Sama. He sees them the same way. Brahmabhuta, prasanatma, joyful within. He automatically has no more hankering, no more lamentation. Sama sarveshu bhuteshu. He sees the beauty, the spiritual beauty in others, the way Srila Prabhupada sees us as spirit soul, not in terms of our disease condition, but in terms of our healthy potential. And then what does Krishna say? Mad bhaktim lavate param. He can start to have devotional feeling toward me, Krishna says. This is the prerequisite of having devotional feeling. So Srila Prabhupada is continuing in this purport, third canto, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, it's stated that one becomes joyful. In that joyful attitude, one can understand the science of God, or Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, Srila Prabhupada writes, it is not possible. We have to come to this joyful point. Mode of goodness, Brahminical life, internal peace in the heart, joyfulness. Okay, here's another one. It's a lecture in 1973, London, July 23rd, 1973, on Bhagavad Gita. So Srila Prabhupada writes, he speaks, this is Krishna consciousness. You must voluntarily agree. Nobody can make you agree. It has to come from your heart. Not something hackneyed or mechanical that you're doing, I'm doing this, I'm doing this. You must voluntarily agree. Not hackneyed, mechanical. And then he imitates us in this lecture. He says, the spiritual master says to do like this. All right, let me do it. Then Srila Prabhupada said, no, you have to understand very nicely. Tesham satata yuktanam, bhajatam priti purvakam. Priti, with love. When you work for Krishna, with love and enthusiasm, that is your Krishna conscious life. If you think that, quote, it is hackneyed, it's troublesome, but what can I do? These people, they ask me to do it. I have to do it. And that is not Krishna consciousness. Srila Prabhupada says, you have to do it voluntarily and with great pleasure. You love it. Then you'll know. He's saying that when you do it, when you engage with a great pleasure, with joyful enthusiasm, you'll begin to feel a sense of reciprocation. Then you'll know that this is real. Srila Prabhupada writes in 434 of Bhagavad Gita that blind following is condemned. Just doing what are the checklist of things we're supposed to do, but you don't have this realization. It's called blind following. It's condemned. Why? Because you'll never advance that way. He says, then you'll know. Utsahan Nishchaya Daryat. He says, you will find in our Upadeshamrita, text number 3, always you should be enthusiastic. Utsahat. Daryat. With patience. Tat karma pravartanat. Nishchayat. Nishchayat means with confidence. What is that? Then Srila Prabhupada said, when I'm engaged in Krishna's business, in Krishna's activities, Krishna, he will surely take me back home, back. Nishchayat. So he says, Krishna says, I will take you back. It is stated. Krishna is not a liar, Srila Prabhupada says. So we have to work with this enthusiasm. So he's telling us the mood which will invoke Krishna's desire to reciprocate with us. We don't do it because by doing it like earning points, when I get enough points, I'll get a blessing of realization. It's not that when I have realization that I'll be joyful. It's when I engage in Krishna conscious activity joyfully, I'll have realization. It's 180 degrees. Here's another one. Vrindavan lecture, 1972, October 31. Lecture on Srimad Bhagavatam, 1st Canto, 2nd chapter, text number 20. If you accept Bhagavad Bhakti Yoga, devotional service to the Lord, you shall be prasanna manasa. You will always be feeling jolly. If I am not jolly, Srila Prabhupada continues, if I am not jolly, if I'm not prasanna manasa, that means Maya has attacked me. And Bhagavad Bhakta shall never be aprasanna, not joyful. A devotee is never not joyful, always joyful, Srila Prabhupada can. If he is actually in contact with Krishna, how he can become morose? No. If he's morose, if he's unhappy, that means Maya has attacked him. That is the test. Therefore, Rupa Goswami says, Srila Prabhupada continues, Utsaha, we shall always be enthusiastic. But we cannot become enthusiastic artificially. There must be Bhagavad Bhakti Yoga, so that if we engage in it with enthusiasm to Krishna, we'll feel Krishna's reciprocation. So that's real enthusiasm. Now let's go to the next lecture on Srimad Bhagavatam, 1st Canto, as Srila Prabhupada says, so after acquiring this knowledge, the life of devotional service begins. Brahmabhuta, prasanatma, na sochati na kankshati. Samasarveshu bhuteshu madbhaktim labhate para. That is required. And in that stage of devotional life, one can understand what is Krishna. Bhaktya mam abhijanati. That Krishna says, I don't reveal myself to anyone unless they have that bhakti feeling. He says, that is tattvata. Yavanyashasmi Tattvata, Srila Prabhupada. That is Tattvata understanding. In other words, Srila Prabhupada is saying we have to approach Krishna as if we know it's a reality, with full positive expectation, with full enthusiasm, with a joyful heart. That is the only thing that Krishna will respond to. Srila Prabhupada continues, unless one becomes jubilant, joyful, he cannot understand what is Krishna. It is not possible to understand superficially Krishna. Then Srila Prabhupada gives example. Quote, oh, he appeared in Mathura, in his uncle's prison house. He said, the Srila Prabhupada says, that is also nice. We're collecting information we can regurgitate. But one, Srila Prabhupada continues, but one should try to understand Krishna in fact. In other words, to feel him. That fact can be revealed only by devotion. You cannot challenge Krishna. Krishna will reveal if we try to serve Krishna as his servant, then Krishna will reveal. Okay, let's do another one. Lecture, New Vrindavan, 1969, Srimad Bhagavatam 1.5.11. So, Srila Prabhupada says, this transcendental life means to understand the absolute truth. The absolute truth can be understood perfectly only through devotional service. There's no other way. There's no other way. In every scripture, Vedic scripture, this is announced. In Bhagavatam also, the same thing. Evam prasana manaso bhagavad bhakti yogata. When by discharging devotional service, one will be prasana manasa. Oh, very jolly mood. Always jolly. Unless one is freed from material anxiety, unless one is spiritually joyful, he cannot understand what is this science of Krishna. It is not possible. Srila Prabhupada continues, so therefore we have to cultivate then our ultimate goal of life, to understand the absolute truth, our relationship with him. That will be perfectly done. We have to approach Krishna consciousness and this consciousness. We're not cultivating these activities. We're cultivating this consciousness through these activities. So Srila Prabhupada said, even Krishna says that when you become joyful, this enables you to have love for me. Bhaktya mama bijanati. Mad bhaktim labhate param. 1854. When you become joyful within your heart, then you can become devotional. One who is feeling love, feeling joyful within his heart, he feels love. Automatically. He has something to share. He's not in need. He feels to give automatically. Now, so then, here, the Nectar of Devotion, Chapter 7. A devotee should never be subjected to lamentation or illusion. There is the following statement in the Padma Purana. Quote, within the heart of that person who is overpowered by lamentation and anger, there is no possibility of Krishna being manifested. Nectar of Devotion, Chapter 7. as long as we have these qualities in our heart. So here's another one. Nectar of instruction. Quote, one should accept the opportunity, and soon we'll summarize. One should accept this opportunity. What opportunity? To return home, back to Godhead. Very enthusiastically. Without enthusiasm, one cannot be successful. Even in the material world, one has to be very enthusiastic in his particular field of activity in order to become successful. A student, a businessman, artist, or anyone else who wants success in his line, he must be enthusiastic. Similarly, one has to be very enthusiastic in devotional service. Nectar of instruction, third verse. Okay, so now we're going to summarize a little bit. So this mode of goodness, it brings this joyfulness into focus in the heart. It's explained in our books. Anyone who's situated on this Brahmabhuta platform, he becomes joyful, and because as he's joyful, he's not afflicted with material desire and lamentation. Why? Because he's already fulfilled within his heart. Krishna says in 1854 that such a soul becomes capable of having devotional feelings. He has loving feelings, but under the guidance of a spiritual master, a real spirit, he says that these feelings that you have wanting to take pleasure in the happiness of others, it should be directed towards God first. This will take care of everything. So Krishna says that as soon as there's devotional feeling in the heart, as soon as there's devotional feeling in our heart, we are blessed with a sense of reciprocation, the transcendental reciprocation. This sense of reciprocation, this is what we mean by realization. You say, oh, this feels really good. I want more. We have to have that. In Bhagavad Gita 4:34, Srila Prabhupada says, we should not be blind follower. He says blind following is condemned. We can only be maintained on the spiritual platform if we're buoyed up by a sense of this sense of transcendental reciprocation. It feels good, then we want more. So he says, therefore, Krishna says that engagement on the platform of devotion, it gives direct perception of the self by realization. This is the most confidential knowledge that Krishna shares with us in his Bhagavad Gita. Nobody but a devotee can have this. Not a Gyani, not a Karmi, not a yogi. They're all trying by their own power to achieve something great. But Krishna says, I only give this knowledge to those who love me without wanting anything back in return. So Shushukam Kartam Avyayam. Krishna says, this knowledge is eternal, and it's everlasting and joyfully performed. So we have to, so Srila Bhaktisiddhanta would talk about discipline of our own mind. He would say, I forget which is which, but in the morning we should do one thing, and in the evening we should do something else. One thing is to beat our mind with a broom, and the other thing is to beat our mind with a shoe. That the mind is always wants something, or is unhappy about something, or in anxiety about something. But Srila Prabhupada says But to adopt this joyful Krishna consciousness, he says, it is not an artificial imposition on the mind, quote unquote. Krishna consciousness is not an artificial imposition on the mind. This is the consciousness of the eternal spirit soul. This is called Krishna consciousness. Srila Prabhupada writes that this consciousness, engagement in devotional service with joyful enthusiasm, he says, listen to this, he says, it can be adopted by anyone in a second. 1 second. Or, Srila Prabhupada says, it may not be adopted in hundreds or millions of births. Srila Prabhupada says this in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, text 72, purport. Srila Prabhupada writes, quote, one can attain Krishna consciousness or divine life at once within a second, or one may not attain such a state of life even after millions of births. It is only a matter of understanding and accepting the fact, unquote. So, it's not by doing and being a good boy or a good girl that one day, by earning points, that one day we'll receive a reward, just like you get a salary or a paycheck at the end of a week or the end of a month or a bonus at the end of the year. No, Srila Prabhupada says in 1 second, simply by adopting this mood of joyful enthusiasm, engaging in Krishna's service with joyful. It's not that when I become enlightened that I'll have this joyful enthusiasm, but when I engage with this joyful enthusiasm, I'll become enlightened. So we have to accept it. That's all. Imagine in your mind. I ask you, I challenge you. Imagine in your mind, even for one moment, what it would be like to engage in your sadhana in a spirit of joyful enthusiasm. Imagine in your mind what it would be like to engage in your sadhana in a spirit of joyful enthusiasm. I'm not saying Utsahan. Srila Rupa Goswami says you got to be enthusiastic or it won't happen. and Krishna says, unless you're joyful within your heart, prasanatma, you can't approach me with love. So it's not my idea. So so imagine in your mind, just for a moment, what it would be like to engage in your sadhana in a spirit of joyful enthusiasm. Something that you just love to do. You love to chant Krishna's name. And then do it. What they say, try it on for size. Try it on for size. I used to associate with one devotee, Vishnu Jan Maharaj. He's a beautiful devotee. He used to say, the attitude is the altitude. That's the way he would talk. You get as high as you feel this joyful spirit. Try it on. Srila Prabhupada is not hiding from us. Srila Prabhupada is simply waiting for us to approach him. How? In a spirit of joyful enthusiasm. The moment we engage in chanting the holy name with joyful enthusiasm, desiring to please Srila Prabhupada, with this sound vibration. I'll say it one more. The moment we engage in chanting the holy name with a joyful enthusiasm, desiring to please Srila Prabhupada with that sound vibration, we immediately will feel his presence. We immediately feel his presence and his loving reciprocation. He's not hiding. He's waiting. Srila Prabhupada writes, it is only a matter of understanding and accepting the fact. Approaching Srila Prabhupada in a mood of joyful enthusiasm, this is the real measure of acceptance. We really... So, the last few words. Once we experience a sense of loving reciprocation with Srila Prabhupada in our sadhana, okay, we will desire to return to that platform every time we pick up our japa beads. And gradually, the determination will come. We want to live on that platform. Yes, we won't be perfect. We'll be distracted. We'll be forgetful. We'll become fruitive over the results of our work. We'll find ourselves bewildered. So many things. But having had a taste of this transcendental reciprocation, our lives will be different. Our lives will be changed. This taste of transcendental reciprocation, this is the shade of Srila Prabhupada's lotus feet. We sing every morning, oh Master, be merciful and give me the shade of your lotus feet. Once having had a taste of the shade of Srila Prabhupada's lotus, what is that shade? That Maya will go away from us. We'll feel joyful within our heart. So once having had a taste of this shade of Srila Prabhupada's lotus feet, we'll understand this is where my shelter lies. In the material world, people are taking shelter of everything. Whether it could be drink, could be marijuana, it could be money, it could be a social position, it could be big house, more clothes, fancy car, this, that, other thing. Be a member of the Playboy Penthouse. They're taking shelter, but we were taking shelter of Srila Prabhupada, that he's giving us protection from Maya by being in touch with him. So Srila Prabhupada says, so once having had a taste, we'll know where our real shelter is. And even though we will falter, you will falter, I will falter, I falter, but we'll know how to put ourselves back on track. We'll have a new faith, a faith that this is real, I can have it. And as Srila Prabhupada writes, it only takes 1 second. You don't have to earn anything. You don't have to have good points. It's not how many books you distributed. It's not how many temples you open. It's not anything. It's just approaching Srila Prabhupada and Krishna with joyful enthusiasm. And that is the ticket. Gradually will become, when we have that, when we know that this is, gradually we'll become more and more determined to live on that platform. The platform of Krishna consciousness. Thank you so much. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Right, Hare Krishna.
How
So
much?
we're at
How
1
long?
hour, about 1 hour and 20 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Hare Krishna. He lives forever in his divine instructions, and the follower lives with him. That's in Srila Prabhupada's Bhagavatam. So,
Yeah.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you. So it's just you and me today?
That's me and you. That's it.
Okay. Thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Try.
One day we'll have kirtan together. I'll come there, or you'll
Sure.
come here. But you're too busy. You got 100 things going on.
Oh,
But
yeah.
we'll get together.
Try. Oh, Hare Krishna. So, if anyone has any questions, they can contact Ishan Prabhu. His email is in the title of the playlist. Ishan Prabhu, thank you very much. We'll continue another session next week. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
All glories to Sri